Welcome to Closer to Venus. I'm Johnny Burke. Today's guest is Ingrid Honkala. She is a scientist, light worker, life coach, and author of A Brightly Guided Life. Today, we will be talking about the beings of light. Ingrid, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me here. What an honor and what a bless to be able to share with you, with all your audience. Thank you.
I think it's going to be a very interesting chat. So, when you were young, apparently your parents discovered that you could hear and see things no one else could. And you also had 2 near-death experiences. Which actually came first?
I was never like an ordinary child, but what came first was my first near-death experience when I was close to 3 years old.
Can you tell us a little bit about how that happened?
Yes, this accident happened because my parents used to work and they would leave very early in the morning and leave us at the care of a maid. And this lady didn't really pay attention to us when they were not around. And my parents left. My oldest sister, who was close to 4, and I decided to go play in the patio in the house. And in this patio, there was a big tank. And the purpose of this tank was for collecting water for hand washing clothes. I mentioned the tank because that's where the accident happened. With my sister, we found a ball, decided let's play across the tank. This was a huge tank, Johnny, just held about 900 gallons of water. We climbed on the tank and she threw the ball at me, but she didn't apply enough force. And then the ball fell in the water and I leaned forward thinking, I can grab it. And when I touched it, it rolled on the surface of the water and I fell in the tank. The first feeling was this water was frigid cold, very, very cold. And I was shocked by the coldness of the water. The next was the realization why I cannot breathe. I've never been in a pool, never had the head under the water. So I didn't know that if you fall in the water, you drown. And then I enter in this state of absolute panic. I want to breathe and I want to just escape from this tank, but there's nothing I could do. I was in the state of complete horror when the most amazing thing happened, just like that. I went from that horror to a state of absolute. And I didn't understand at that moment, but all I knew was that I didn't need to get out of the tank. I didn't need to breathe anymore. I didn't need to go anywhere. Nothing was needed. I was just experiencing well-being, peace, serenity, grayness, just like, oh, this feels so good. People ask me, how can I remember this if I was so little? There was a lot of contrast. The tank was a very dark area. The moment I went into that calmness, the first thing I saw was light that came from below and was able to illuminate the whole tank. Right before I went into the calmness, the silence, I was hearing my heart. My heart was pounding in my chest. I could hear it in my head like a drum. It was boom, boom, boom. That added to the fact that I lived in a very busy house. So I was used to a lot of noise. When I entered into the space of calmness, there was absolute silence. That silence that came with peace, with relaxation. And I love this silence so much, Johnny, that I crave this silence for the rest of my life.
Really? So did you see anything else when you were in the tank?
Yes. So what happened next is I started to see bubbles that were surrounded by light and they were floating in the tank. And I was like, wow, this is nice. And then I started to chase these bubbles. And there was a moment in which I saw a body floating in the water. And I had the absolute clarity, the knowing, oh, that's my body. And I didn't feel afraid. It was just the sense of like, whoa, the sense of familiarity. Like, this is kind of normal. Then it came the other big contrast. I was born as a very sick child. And I spent almost the first 3 years of my life unwell. I didn't even know, Johnny, what to feel well was. And now I am in the state of absolute well-being. So, of course, I see that body and I'm like, you know what? I'm not going back to that. And I just turned around and left the body behind. The moment I did this, I started to see flowers. And these were flowers that were blooming from nowhere. And I enter now in a deeper state of joy. And I'm just being carried, not needing to go anywhere, do anything, desire nothing, when in just a flash, I appear in the maid's room. And I was looking at her from above, like floating in the ceiling. And I just like, oh, that's Maria. But she was completely unaware of what is happening. From there, in another blink like that, I appear in my mom's path. She was walking. She didn't have a car. She left early that morning and she was close to her bus stop. And when I saw her like floating from above, I said, oh, that's Mom. And this is amazing. This is actually what also validates this whole experience. It was my mom. The moment I said, that's Mom, she stopped. She didn't give another step. She did nothing. She just stopped. Like she knew that something was happening at home with one of her babies. So what she did at that moment, she turned around and started to run back home.
Really? Started running?
Yes, that was amazing. But at the same time, it's like I saw her running, but then I got distracted by an image of a dog. I saw a dog at the end of the street. And the moment I see the dog, since I just love animals, I was with the dog. Oh, this was cool. And then I changed my point of view, perception, and I saw a park. And the moment I saw the park, I was in the park. Like time and space for me had vanished. I could be anywhere at any time.
What you're describing is what is often described in the afterlife, where unlike on the earth plane, manifestation is pretty much instant. At least that's what I'm told. In other words, you think of something, you're there. You think of a person, you're with them. So I think it's actually pretty common for near-death experiencers to talk about these events as fantastic as they sound. So what happened next?
What happened after that, I'm playing this game of having fun. And I'm playing this game of going places. I appeared in a realm, and this realm was made of pure, bright, intense, shiny light. And for the first time in the 3 years of my life, almost 3 years, I felt I am home. It was the sense of returning home. It was the sense of when you get home after a day of being really busy, tired, and just feel so good, so welcoming. I had seen my body suspended in the water until this moment. I really didn't have the clarity, the realization that that was not me. At this moment, I had that realization. I am not that body. I am not that persona. I am not that. And I realized myself as a being of light.
That you were a being of light.
Yes.
Right? Okay. So that's basically like saying that body, our body, is not really us. I think that's what you're trying to explain. That's very interesting. What else did you see?
From there, I started to have the sense of dissolving, like being able to sense the whole. And from there, I went to experience what some call the non-self. I just called it nothingness. But when I mention nothing, people get afraid. But I said, no, it's nothing because it's nothing that I knew. It wasn't the limited thinking. There was no color, no meaning, no sound, no form. The absence of everything I think I knew, but at the same time, the wholeness, the totality of everything.
Okay.
And the only thing I can use as a form of expression is experiencing absolute presence and just pure consciousness. And I'm in this state of being when finally my mom arrives home. She knew exactly where to go. We live in a big house. She could have gone any other room. No, she went directly to the patio. My sister was still there leaning into the tank trying to get me. And I say that the purpose of my sister there was to show my mom, Ingrid is there and I cannot get her.
She couldn't reach you. I remember that part.
Yes. So my mom jumped in the tank. She got me out. She knew CPR. She knew CPR for children. So she knew exactly where to go. So this is another amazing thing. All these synchronicities, how they play. And then she did all she knew, but I was so disconnected from this body, from this reality that I didn't feel anything. And in just like a flash, I felt that I had jumped from the tallest building in the world. And there was nothing I could do to stop this. But it was the sense of like, no, like I don't want to leave home. And I felt like I was being pulled, like I was being sucked back into the body, like a vacuum cleaner. And the only reason I knew I was back is because of the sense of coldness and the sickness of the body, feeling trapped. It was just overwhelming. And I just did not want to be here. I was angry. I don't want to be here.
That's also pretty common too, when the near-death experience survivor gets back into the body. Let's talk about your life after that happened. How did it change your intuitive gifts? Did it amplify them? And what was it like growing up after this experience?
A combination of wonder and trouble. When I came back, I didn't want to be here. I came back with an awareness I didn't have before. So when I look at my parents, it was the sense, you're not just my biological parents. I experienced oneness, so I felt them as my equal. I didn't identify with the role of parent, of child. Look at my body and I'll be like, I'm not this child. So I never felt like a child. It was hard because I look at other children and I could not relate. I would just be like, what is happening to these people? They don't know anything. I was so little, didn't have the language or the way to convey what was happening. But other things came as validation. I was acting differently. It was like I was rejecting to be here. Then not long after, I started to have abilities. I was 3 and now I could read and write. I could resolve mathematical problems. So for the people around me, for my mom, my parents, it was hard because they didn't really know what was happening with these girls. Good thing my mom worked with children. She was very patient. She was actually among the first people validating the possibility to experience other things. The most amazing things started when I started to see and communicate what called beings of light. That was the way in which I was able to actually function and start being able to experience my human experience too.
The beings of light, would you say they are the same thing as spirit guides or angels, or possibly different types of beings?
Yes, they are all kind of different types of beings. I started to experience things by like the age of 6, I started to see what we call spirits. So when I started to see what we call spirits, I was very frightened. The first experience was terrorizing. I got up, I ran to my mom. My mom already had shared with me that she could see spirits too. So that's why she was the first person validating the fact that I was seeing things, because she had abilities to. The spirits and the beings of light are not the same.
So they're not the same.
Just wait. That's what I thought. That's what I told my mom. And then my mom was explaining, what is that you see? And then I started to explain and she started to cry and she said, I think that you can see angels. And I said, Mom, but I don't know because they don't have wings. That's all we knew, the Catholic teachings. And then I was curious. And I already had been talking with the beings of light for a few years. This was when I was 6. First, I asked them, I called them dark spirits because they were really dark. And I said, what is with these dark spirits? The beings of light always being very kind, very compassionate, really sweet. They said to me, that thing that you call spirits, in essence, we're all the same.
Really?
We're all the same. The difference is the level of awareness that you have about who you truly are. Wow, that was amazing. I asked them after that, are you angels? Mm-hmm. My mom said that you are angels. And they said this answer that they gave me also was amazing, because they said, we are what you want us to be.
That I've never heard before. There were spirits in your house. You had a housekeeper that was not very nice to you, and she was trying to cast a spell. And it was explained to you by the beings of light that those were spirits in your house, but they are protecting you from this person. So you're saying these spirits and the angels are essentially the same thing. It's just they're on different levels of awareness.
Yes. To answer your question, later in life, when I started to learn also about ascended masters and other beings, and then I asked them, are you ascended masters? They answer, in essence, we're all the same. The difference, again, the level of awareness you have about who you truly are. So I said, So how you get to these levels? And they said experience, understanding, awakening, clarity. As we awakening the truth that we are, then we start touching our true nature. And the closer you get to the core that you are is what we will call a being that is more advanced. See, we humans need to have a kind of hierarchy in everything. So we would say a being that is more in touch with the true nature will be a being that is more evolved.
Okay.
But in essence, we're all the same. We're all light.
I think that makes it a little bit easier for people to understand the nature of spirits and different levels and different vibrations. How have these experiences changed your views of spirituality or religion?
I just think that everything is necessary because sometimes we need to start somewhere. There's something that is beyond me as a person. There's a divinity, there's an energy, there's something else. So religion actually comes from the word religare, which means reunite, connect. And that was the idea that people with the knowledge will connect and transmit that knowledge to others. I've been already studying since I was very young. At 9 years old, I was already reading the Bhagavad Gita. I was already reading the scriptures, the Bible, the book of discernment, Viveka Shudamani, the book of self-realization. I was already compiling all this knowledge, and I started to study the Indian cultures of the Americas, and wow, learning about this incredible knowledge that these people have, and it all came from their connection with Source. I started to realize the core of all religions is the same. See, if the core of a religion is love, compassion, kindness, understanding, clarity, knowledge, wisdom, then that is the truth. And the rest is how we transmit the teaching. And that's where sometimes people loses the focus of attention. They start getting lost in the ritual and lose the connection with the truth of the teaching. What is the core of that teaching? Jesus came and talked about love. Buddha talked about love. All these incredible, amazing masters and teachers were talking about those core principles. When I asked the beings of light about things that we call emotions and feelings like love, joy, peace, compassion, kindness, they say, Ingrid, those are not just emotions. Those are not just feelings. Those are principles, universal principles. So if you, whatever religion you practice, go to the core principles of that, and then you can start peeling the layers of all the conditioning and go back to your heart.
Let's talk about the book for a minute. There's quite a few quotes that I really liked that I think are very illuminating, speaking of beings of light. Here's one. The beings of light told you they have forgotten who they truly are and feel lost, but sooner or later, they will find their way home. Is this how the beings of light explain to you that all earthbound spirits, like the ones that were in your house, eventually find their way home?
Yes, including us, Johnny.
Okay.
Yes. So our human experience is actually the best ground to be able to experience contrast and to be able to appreciate what we cannot remember. How can you appreciate wellness if you never have been sick? How can you appreciate joy if you have not been sad? So these give us what we need to go to that place of balance, what is called the middle way. When there's a person that have left the body and is what we call a spirit that is trapped in that sense of still having a lot of interest in the early stuff, then that person has lost the focus of attention. So that being is still trapped in thinking or feeling, that the physicality is reality. So that's when these beings get trapped and they cannot continue. They just have keen interest in the matter of this world and they cannot leave. So people that are already in deeper touch with their true nature can help beings here on earth or in the spirit realm that are still lost and don't know the way.
So the beings of light can act as a rescue team for some of the earthbound spirits.
Yes.
That's definitely good to know. Here's another one. This is when you were talking about your aunt who was not very nice to you. You ask the beings of light, wasn't my aunt supposed to love me? Their answer was, she does love you, but she doesn't know what she's doing. She's here to teach you. Is this an example of a soul contract?
Yes, actually, that's a good example. And we make these contracts because that's the idea that we come here and it's like, don't waste your time. You have to wake up. This is what we call challenges. And this is what can turn into pains and suffering. Our main experience here as humans is to experience the contrast that is going to shake us up so we can wake up. And we cannot understand that the moment something hard is happening to us, how can I have called for this? This is ridiculous because we cannot see it at the moment. What we have to do in moments like that is just be patient, kind with ourselves, compassionate, and just embrace. And later in life, it usually happens and we look back and really pay attention. Most of the time, we can get to that place of, oh, I understand why that happened.
And it was necessary.
And it was necessary, exactly, for a change.
Like you said earlier, that actually implies pre-birth planning and life in between incarnations. So do you remember any past lives of your own?
I do, actually. And I started to have access since I was about 17 years old.
Wow.
I was born with respiratory problems. I was born very sick. Until the age of 17, I was always sick. I had asthma, chronic bronchitis. And the moment I had access to my past lives, and then I was able to see many lives in which I died from respiratory causes. And I was able to see that I was in a battle, actually, and I was killed by a sword that went through my lungs. And when that happened, I drowned. My first ND was drowning. I drowned in my own blood. And after that life, for many lives, I died from respiratory problems. And when I came back from that recognition, that very day, I healed for the rest of my life from respiratory problems. I have never been sick again.
Right. That is in the book as well.
Yes, that's in the book. And something that is not in the book, because that just happened a couple of days ago, I had a kidney stone. So I went to the hospital and they did a x-ray of my chest to see the rocks in my kidneys. And then when they did that x-ray, they came all alarmed to the room because they saw a scar in my lung. And then they thought this could be cancer, who knows what. And then for a couple of years, they wanted to do this follow checkup of x-rays and things. And then when they did it again, the doctor saw it and he's like, the only way you could have had this scar in your lung is if you ever had tuberculosis. And I was shocked and I didn't say, of course, nothing to the doctor because he didn't understand. But in like about 5 or 6 past lives, I had died from tuberculosis.
That's really incredible.
Yeah.
Now, as the book described, you had several visions. One is, as the being of light was talking, I had a vision of meeting and marrying Daniel and a little girl running and giggling in the distance. And you said, who is she? And the being of light responded, your daughter, Anna. So are the beings of light showing you your future husband and your daughter before she was born?
Yes, actually, I started to have visions since I was 4 years old. So at 4, when my parents brought me to see the ocean, I turned to my mom and I said, Mom, someday I'm going to know what is under that blanket. And at 5, I told my dad, I'm going to be a marine scientist. And then later, when I was 9, I had many more, but these are like very clearly important because they mark moments in my life that actually happened. At 9, I saw who my husband was going to be, which is my husband now, Mike. I was 9 and I met him 23 years later. At 12, I knew I was going to work for NASA and I was up here in front of the building, and 20 something years later, this is where I'm going to work without not even having contract, nothing, but I knew. Later, when I was living in Europe, I had a vision of Daniel was my first husband and I had the vision of Anna. We lost Anna, but later, I also understood it was a soul contract with her. She only needed to come for a short time. Then, yeah, it kept just going like that. The beings of light are showing everything is just here and now. In our human mind, we only see the time working in the horizontal, but the time is actually working in the vertical and
in that space, not on the earth plane. How do you help others understand near-death experiences and out-of-body experiences also?
Oh, yeah, this is really, really important. And it's part of this process that we have these experiences so we can help others integrate. What is really beautiful is the possibility to help people, to help children. So I have been able to help not just children, but their parents to integrate, to understand.
This reminds me of another quote from the book. I heard them saying, "Someday you will pass these teachings on to many others." Would you say you are now an apprentice to the beings of light, or are you a being of light?
Oh, we are all beings of light, Johnny. We are all light. There was a moment when I asked them, why me? And then they said, because you are special. And I said, what do you mean when you say that I am special? And the answer was amazing. They said, everybody, every single one is special, but they don't know it yet. So we are all light. We are all an emanation of God. We're all the image and likeness of God. We're all the light. But we have created layers like an onion of conditionings, beliefs. And then like an onion, we have many, many layers. And what happens when you peel an onion? You cry a lot. Hard.
It's very true.
Yeah.
Your eyes definitely do water. There's no question about that. Is talking to the beings of light the same thing as trying to talk to your spirit guides and your angels? You just said we're all basically the same essence. How do you get in contact with them?
By quieting your mind. That's why these techniques from millennia are being passed to us on meditation, mindfulness, concentration. The moment that you start calming your mind, then you have, say that you are the radio, and now you put your dial in the right place. After my near-death experience, the first one, is like the doors never close. And then the beings of light said, Ingrid, of course the doors never close because there are no doors.
There are no doors.
We are the ones that create the doors. See, we're the ones that limit ourselves. We're the ones that think, I cannot do it, or I am limited to think I'm this body, or I am this story, or I am this drama, or I am this situation. The moment that we start calming the mind and connecting with the true nature that we are, silence, peace, calmness, consciousness, then we are creating a space. We can move that dial and now be open to receive.
That sounds like very good advice on tuning in, as you say it. And I think quieting the mind is advice I hear quite a bit. Ingrid, thanks so much for joining us today. How can our listeners find out more about you online?
They can go to my website, Ingrid Honkala, HONKALA.com. I have a YouTube channel and I am on Facebook and Instagram, Twitter.
I will put that link in the show notes as well. You've been listening to Closer to Venus. I'm Johnny Burke. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing. You can also leave us a review on iTunes as well. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.